Hello everyone, my name is Brian Barris. I've been developing Unity games for 3 years now, both independently and in team environments during my computer science degree. Through that work, I've explored nearly every aspect of game development, but I discovered that my true passion lies in level design. In this 5-minute video, I'll walk through 3 of my most significant projects and explain the design process behind each one. Before diving into the projects, I want to briefly explain my design process, since I'll be referencing it throughout. My process begins with defining the problem and its limitations. Next, I create a plan that works within those constraints. Finally, I put that plan into action. This process is iterative, meaning I repeat it as often as necessary until that problem is effectively solved. If new challenges arise, the same process applies again. To see this in action, let's start with my most recent project, Virtual Insanity in Donuts, a VR horror game. This project challenged me because my level design responsibilities were heavily limited. Each level took place in a single room, and every room needed 4 exits for the player to choose from. With limited player movement and this structure being core to the gameplay, I had no choice but to fully embrace these constraints. With the problem and limitations defined, I needed a plan. That plan was to find creative ways to make each level feel distinct and unsettling, despite having the same basic layout. One idea I explored was removing one of the walls entirely, instead of placing a door there. When put into action, this turned out to be very effective. The entire environment sat on a massive platform with a carpet texture, and combined with minimal lighting, the endless carpet created a familiar but deeply unsettling feeling. To reinforce that atmosphere, I placed a table far out into the distance, something ordinary placed in a very abnormal space. This has not only made the level feel unique, but also helped establish the correct tone for a horror experience. Because this was a VR game, attention to detail was critical. Every object is viewed up close, so scale and placement needed to feel natural. I varied textures, colors, and prop arrangements using Unity's scene editor to give each level its own identity, even with limited assets. I also tested each level using my own VR headset to ensure everything looked and felt right from the player's perspective. Next, in Last Stand on Mars, first-person shooter where I had full creative control over the level design but only 1 month to build large outdoor environments. With few indoor assets available, I relied heavily on Unity's terrain editor to create engaging spaces that supported fast-paced tactical gameplay. By shaping terrain to include elevated positions, cover, and varied sightlines, I gave players opportunities to think strategically rather than relying purely on reflexes and aim. I wanted the gameplay to feel decision-based because thoughtful planning is often more rewarding and more memorable than instinct alone. To make the environment immersive, I used the terrain editor to replicate the look and feel of Mars. Large mountain ranges in the distance and varied dunes near the player helped sell the scale of the environment. Since there were limited ways to tell the story directly, I relied on the terrain itself to draw the player into the experience. A believable environment plays a major role in immersion. In summary, with Last Stand on Mars, the challenge was creating multiple engaging FPS levels with limited time and resources. By planning around the terrain editor and executing efficiently, I was able to meet my goals with minimal setbacks. Finally, Fluffy, a 2D action platformer where I was solely responsible for level design. This was my first time working in that role, and it required me to further refine my design process. This project highlights how a structured approach leads to strong results. The expectations were high. Levels needed to introduce new abilities, incorporate combat, maintain consistent art direction, and support the story. The biggest limitations were time and a lack of experience. Extensive documentation helped organize these requirements during the planning phase. However, missing art assets, incomplete player movement, and unimplemented enemy AI couldn't slow down level design. I created rough layouts early, which served as flexible guidelines. As new assets and mechanics were added, I iteratively refined the levels, allowing everything to come together smoothly over time. Across these projects, I've learned how to work within constraints, adapt quickly, and use level design to shape player experience. Whether it's VR horror, tactical shooters, or 2D platforming, my goal is always the same: to create levels that are engaging, intentional, and memorable. Feel free to reach out to me, and thank you for watching.